Hey everybody, so today we have a special guest, my wife. Some of you may know her, some of you may not. If you watch our channel, then you already know who this is. But for those who don't, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, honey?
My name is Lashawnta'S. I am a mother of 4 and a wife, and I am 33 years old, and I live in Cincinnati, Ohio.
So, tell us about your childhood, because most people don't know that you're not originally from here. So, why don't you start right there and just lead us all the way up to when you found God.
Okay, so I was born and raised in Detroit, Michigan. I am the oldest of 15 children, and we just grew up in Detroit, Michigan. We moved to Cincinnati when I was about 13 years old. No, I'm sorry, take that back. We moved here to Cincinnati when I was about 8, and I went back and forth to Detroit. And then I came here again when I was about 14 years old, and it's been my residential place since then. And so Detroit was I'm sure everybody knows about Detroit, Michigan. But here in Cincinnati is basically where I met my husband, and I have my children here in Ohio as well. I do have family still in Detroit, Michigan, but for the most part I have some family members here in Ohio. So I was the oldest of, I am the oldest of 15 children, but at the time in Detroit, I lived with my mother. She was also the oldest of her siblings, and she had me at the age of 15. She struggled to raise me. We lived in poverty neighborhoods, gang banging related, and so because of that, she got caught up with the wrong group of people, and so it started causing issues for her. And as a result of that, I witnessed a lot of things take place with my mom. She ended up wanting a better life for us, and so she came to Cincinnati, Ohio. And with coming to Cincinnati, Ohio, we still grew up in poverty-stricken neighborhoods, and grew up living in government assisted apartments or whatever. And basically she did what she could do for us as our mom, but eventually we got taken over by the state of Ohio, and we all went to foster care. And so I went to a couple different foster homes, but the one foster home that I remember is growing up with my foster mom, who took me to church every Sunday. I was baptized. I was taught about Jesus, and that's not to mention that my stepmom taught me about Jesus as well. So I already knew about Jesus from that experience. Eventually I grew up, I got older, and I started repeating, of course, generational curses and cycles. I was very promiscuous, dating multiple men and just being wild. And so I had a daughter at the age of 17. I birthed her at 18, but I got pregnant at the age of 17 in high school. And, as a result of that, I was in ignorance. I really didn't have nobody telling me, constantly putting in my ear what the results of having sex outside of marriage would be, and fornicating and having sex with different men. Of course, as a person, you always think like, oh, this could never happen to me. And so I ended up getting pregnant in high school, and of course that was something by itself, because unfortunately the father didn't want to claim my child at that time, and he actually had somebody else pregnant at the time. And so that was a thing within itself, having to raise a child and the father not be involved, or the father be present. And so as a result of that, like I said, I continue to go through the generational curse that was put over my bloodline, dating different men, doing all of these things, basically looking for love in all the wrong places. And so, not realizing that the Lord Jesus Christ was my source. Of course you hear about Jesus, and I actually went to church most Sundays, but I was not saved for real. It was just the thing for me, growing up knowing who Jesus Christ was and being taught about his death, burial, and resurrection. And so I knew that he was real, but I didn't have a personal relationship with him. It was just something that was religious. Like, I went to church every Sunday, I sung in a choir, I felt good, and I left out still the same way, never changed. And so I got, of course, hooked up with the wrong crowd of people. And so I started living basically a fast life, very promiscuous, going to the club every weekend, basically looking for a babysitter all the time because I wanted to be out hanging out with my friends, basically, I guess, living my best life, what I thought. And just partying, and then I started drinking and just trying to fill the void that I had within myself. And I ended up, getting in relationship, and I ended up getting with this guy who I thought I loved at the time. And it's basically just a soul tie now that I know. But just being entangled up with him and thinking that I loved this guy and he loved me, not really knowing who I was at the time. So anything that felt or looked like a little bit of love was enough for me.
What age were you around this time?
At this time, I was about 19 or 20.
19 or 20.
Mm-hmm.
So around that time, what happened? Continue.
Like I said, I was hanging with the wrong group of women, partying every day, not every day, but like on the weekends, just basically living you only live once type of lifestyle. Like, I really had no cares. Yeah, I had a child, but that was not my focal point. My focal point was having fun, feeling good, looking good, promiscuous in a way, because I dress very provocative. I really just didn't know my worth. I didn't know my identity because I was a part of the world. And just because I was in church did not mean that I was saved, because I did not have a personal relationship with God. I didn't know him personally. So it was basically just a religious practice that I did every Sunday and sung in a choir and different things like that. But I was a part of the world. And so, like I said, just hanging with people who basically were in the same position I was in, where they really didn't know who they were, and we were just going throughout life just trying to figure it out, but meeting with the wrong people and just going down the wrong path. And so like I said, I ended up getting into a relationship with this guy, and mind you, I wasn't really the type of person that was real big on relationships, because I did live that fast life, and I would have different guys that I would be interested in, but it was never really nothing serious because I was still doing whatever I wanted to do. But I ended up getting with this guy and basically being in a relationship with him, and because it seemed like something that I never had before, I thought it was real love. And so as a result of that, I ended up getting into an altercation with one of his ex-girlfriends, and it was so bad to the point where we almost basically took each other's life. I'm not honestly even for sure if the guy that I was dating at the time had something still going on with this girl, but I would go through his phone and see text messages about me, and feeling the way that I was feeling, like I wanted to prove, like, this girl ain't got nothing on me, which was my mindset, of course, being a part of the world. And so, the devil presented the perfect opportunity for us to butt heads. I'm not gonna go into the whole situation as a whole, but basically we ended up getting into a physical altercation where weapons were involved. And long story short, the police was looking for me. She filed charges. The police was looking for me. They came to my mom's house with drawn weapons looking for me, a warrant out for my arrest. And at the time I was working at Subway, and so my mom called me and she was just like in a panic, like, where are you? And I'm like, I'm at work, you know, basically working at Subway. I just got out. I just left the club and honestly slept for an hour and went to Subway and was working. And so when she called me, it really wasn't coming through in my mind what she was saying. And she's like, a whole bunch of police officers came to my house with drawn out guns looking for you. And at first I'm thinking like, this gotta be a prank, because why are they looking for me? Mind you, not even realizing the fact that I just had a fight like a week previously, a week before, you know, she called me, because I was so a part of the world that was just something that happened. Like, it wasn't really a big deal to me. And so when she called me and said that, I thought she was like basically lying. And so she's like, they said you need to contact them, you need to turn yourself in. And I'm thinking like, what? Well, because in the altercation, me and a girl, you know, got into a physical altercation because she came where I was at. And so I'm thinking to myself, like, you know, not knowing how it works out in the world, even though I was a part of the world, I still didn't really know what that really looked like, because my stepmom, like I said, raised me up in the church. My foster mom raised me up in the church. I really wasn't able to do much, but once I started, you know, being able to go out and explore the world, when I got pregnant at the age of 17, that's when I started realizing how the world worked and operated. And so this was all new to me. And so, you know, I didn't know that you could have a physical fight with somebody and they initiate the fight, but they still can be the one that can call and press charges on you. I didn't know that's how things happen, you know. And so we ended up, you know, taking myself downtown to the police department. They arrested me, and I met with my public defender, and he basically said, well, this looks good for you because you turned yourself in, you know. What the outcome of that was going to be. I had never been to adult jail before. Growing up in foster care, of course, I went to delinquent juvenile juvenile jail before, in and out, but I never experienced what going to jail as an adult was. And so in my mind, I'm thinking I'm going to go in and I'm going to get back out maybe in a couple of days. And so my public defender, like I said, he met with me. He told me it looked good for me because I turned myself in. But the truth of the matter is I was being charged with this assault, and it was a felony assault. And so where I was in a prison was with women who killed people, and you know, it was a lot of high crimes. Like, it wasn't petty misdemeanor things. This was like a serious thing.
So what age were you around this time?
I was 20.
Still 20?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Keep going, because this is interesting.
Yes. And so my husband, he knows some of this, but he don't know everything that I experienced being a part of the world. But yeah, so when I went to jail, you know, I met a lot of women in there who were like, had hard lives. A lot of them grew up in a foster care system. And I told my husband about this. Like, I actually, before I went to jail, like, I was so lost and so broken due to sleeping with different people and, you know, just being reckless out there. I got to the point that I was so demon possessed and demon filled up that I was literally going to become a stripper. And so every time I tell my husband that, he can never really believe it, but yes, I almost was a stripper if I would have never got arrested at the time that I got arrested. So I met a lot of women in there who were strippers. I think the Lord was showing me what that lifestyle brought. And so I met a lot of women who were in jail with me who were strippers, and they told me how they started off being a stripper and how it led to them being dependent upon drugs and pills and different things like that. And although I was a part of the world and I was trying to become a stripper, I think for me, I was at level 1 because I wasn't drinking every day, but I was drinking every time I went out. And mind you, I was never really a drinker before. I just started doing it because of the relationships, the breakups, the different things that I was experiencing. And it was just so much for me to bear that I just needed an outlet, or so I thought. I needed an outlet in the wrong things. And so I went to jail, and like I said, I met a lot of different women who were from all walks of life, and I knew about prayer. And so that was the first thing that I did once I got to jail. I'm like, God, you gotta get me out of this situation. I got a daughter. Of course you start thinking about things that are important that you really didn't think about when you were outside of the jail. And so I'm telling God, like, I got a daughter, Lord, she needs me, and so I basically was sitting in a jail for like altogether, I think it was about 3 months that I sat in jail. And during those 3 months, I never went to court or anything. And so I'm just confused, like, man, like, am I gonna ever get out of here?
So what happened in jail? What changed you while you were in there?
So actually it was from day one when I went to jail. The Lord began to speak to me, but of course I really couldn't hear him that good, but he was showing me different things. And so right before I went to jail, even though I was lost and I was a part of the world, I was going out, hanging out, drinking and doing all of these things, I started feeling like, okay, I need to get serious with my relationship with God, even though I didn't really know what that looks like. And so me and my friend, we had did this challenge that we were going to do for 30 days where we read scriptures every day. Like I said, I was a part of the world, but I still was in church. So I kind of knew about God, but I didn't really know about God. And so when I got into jail, the Lord started speaking to me. And of course, when you get in situations like that, you like, God, if you just get me out of here, I'll really serve you. But I think for me, I was really serious about that. And the Lord began to speak to me. He said, yes, you're in this predicament, but believe and trust in me, and I'm going to get you out of it. And so I met a couple people who were actually there for the same crime I committed, and they were waiting to be shipped up to prison for, one was facing 3 years in prison, and they had already received their verdict. They were just in jail waiting to be shipped up to prison. And so, you meet a lot of people in jail and you tell them what you're there for, and they'll be like, oh, you're going to spend this much time in prison. And so God had told me, he said, don't listen to what these people are telling you. He was like, focus on me, put your mind on me, and I will deliver you from this situation. And of course, that's easier said than done, because I'm in this situation, living this situation every day, waking up and going to bed in jail, not knowing what was going to happen. And so, I would just talk to different people, and I'd be like, what do you think gonna happen to me? And they'd be like, oh, you're just gonna spend a couple of years up in prison. And so God actually rebuked me at one point in time, and he said, didn't I tell you to stop asking these people about what I'm going to do with you? Their situation is different from your situation. And so I was facing 8 years in prison. I don't know if I said that, because what they were doing with me, I wasn't going to have a jury trial. It was just me, the judge, and the person who was pressing the charges against me. And so there was no jury. And because there were no jury, I was going to get the maximum, which was 8 years. And so it wasn't nothing that I was going to get less than 8 years. This was called a speedy trial. And so there was no jury involved. And you know, the girl, of course, she presented her pictures, her paperwork of everything that I did to her in this altercation. And she told her side of the story. And so, like I said, like every day I was in jail, just, you know, of course, God was speaking to me, but still I had my human side, my flesh side. What's gonna happen? You got a daughter. You know, I was worried about my daughter, you know. I was just like so confused and just all over the place. But I did what I knew to do. Like, even though I was never really saved before, I knew that prayer, I knew that, you know, reading my Bible. And so I would read scriptures, and the Lord would literally, while I'm reading scriptures, he will begin to show me myself when I was in the world. And he began to tell me that the things that I was doing while I was in the world was defiled to him. I was defiling myself, and I was polluted to him. And, you know, not really ever having a relationship with God or hearing his voice before is so profound at that time that I was in jail. You know, I'm thinking like, you know, really, you know, while I was at a part of the world, the things that I was doing was fun. It was, you know, to me at that time, it was fun. Like, I was living my best life. I was young. And so for God to tell me that I literally was a stench unto his nostrils was like, wow, you know. And so it was almost as if he began to take the scales off of my eyes on what I was doing. And I, in a sense, became disgusted with the things that I was doing, because it was like, when I was in the world, I couldn't see the things that I was doing and how it was damaging me spiritually. But now that I'm in this place of isolation and God could really speak to me the way that he wanted to speak to me, he began to show me myself. And I literally began to cry sitting in a jail cell on the bed, like, how did I get here? How did this happen to me? And he said, you were looking for things to fill you up inside when I can only do that. And so, like I said, he kept reiterating to me that he was going to deliver me from that situation. But of course, I couldn't really understand how he was going to do that, because of course this girl had all this evidence against me, that all these things that I did to her. And actually, the night that we got into the altercation, she came to me with a group of people, but they ended up getting the weapon that was used away from me. And so I'm thinking to myself, how am I going to get out of this situation? Like, it really doesn't even make sense. How am I going to get out of this situation? But the thing about God, it doesn't have to make sense for him to perform a miracle. And actually, I'm preaching to myself right now. So, you know, I was, like I said, waking up every day, going to jail. And I think I spent Thanksgiving and Christmas in jail. And so, you know, just being away from my daughter for the first time, like, I was just so worried about her. And these people from the prison ministry came and they was ministering to us. They would sing songs. And I specifically remember this woman asking me if she could pray for me. And I said yes. And she began to prophesy to me. And she said, do you have a daughter and she's the age 3? And I said yes. And I'm so confused because, mind you, I've never seen this woman a day in my life, a Caucasian woman. And she's like, you know, I just want to begin to tell you that God is saying that your daughter is safe and that he's going to protect her and that he's going to cover her and that you don't need to worry. Just focus on what it is that he wants you to focus on in this moment. And as soon as she finished speaking, I literally hit the floor in this jail filled up with other women, and they were all like looking, surrounding me like, is she okay? And the woman who was talking to me, she was like, she's fine. The Holy Spirit is doing something within her. And so I'm in the middle of this jail on the floor, weeping. And so after that, my stepmom that's living in Detroit, Michigan, her and my dad came to visit me. And she's a woman of God. Like I told you guys earlier, she brought me up in the Lord. But I, came back to Cincinnati here to stay with my mother, my biological mother. And so she came with my dad, and she's like, hey, she's like, I want you to go on this 3-day fast with me. And I'm thinking to myself, like, fast? Of course I've done fast before. I've heard about fasting, because like I said, I was in church. But when she said it, it was just like, okay, whatever I gotta do to get out of this place. And so she was like, we're gonna do 3 days of fasting. You can eat fruits and vegetables, and we just praying on your behalf. And so I'm like, okay. And so I'm like, man, like that's kind of hard because the food already disgusting here. But I knew that I wanted to get out of that situation, which was like, I gotta get out of here, And so I literally did the 3-day fast. I remember specifically on the 3rd day, I was in a common area with the rest of the inmates, and we were sitting there watching television, and I literally felt a spiritual thing where I felt a kiss on my forehead. And it was spiritual, but I knew that it was God because it was very warm. Like, and when I don't know if it was an angel or what happened, but I felt the kiss on my forehead the 3rd day of that fast, and like my whole body just started tingling and warm. And I ran to my jail cell because I'm like, I gotta get away from everybody because I'm overwhelmed with emotions right now. And I literally got on my knees and began to just cry out and worship God on my jail cell, the jail's floor. And I just was like, tears just coming down. And mind you, I've never experienced these kind of encounters with God before. Like I said, I was religious, being a part of having a form of godliness but denying the true power of God. And so these things were personal. It was encounters that I never experienced before. And so like my eyes started opening up to who God really was. And like I said, he would continue to reiterate to me that he was going to get me out of that situation. And so I would just read scriptures in my jail cell about being vindicated and him being my righteous judge. And mind you, I didn't know how to study the Bible. I didn't know anything because I never had a serious relationship with God before this moment. And so it was as if he took me to the correct scriptures that I needed. And so I literally remember, I think this was a couple days before New Year's Eve, because like I told you, I was in Christmas for Thanksgiving and for Christmas, but like right before January the 1st, I was going to my first court date. So like actual court date to see what was going to happen, because like I said, when I first got in jail, they told me what I was being charged with, but I never did anything other than that after that. And so this was my first time being in front of the judge and the person that was accusing me. And so that morning, as I sat in a jail cell waiting to go out into the courtroom, I just began to sing words of worship, and I just sung every song that I knew when I was in the choir. And literally the Lord was telling me the whole time, like, I will fight for you. And so I remember getting in a courtroom. I remember my family being there. I remember the girl coming into the courtroom with her and her family. And, she came up basically to testify against me. And she had other people with her testifying against me. And, she began to tell her version of what happened at night. And, my lawyer was asking me, like, what should I say? What should I ask her? And, I remember reading her report against me when I got in jail. Her report stated that I literally came somewhere to attack her, and all of this happened or whatever, and she was alone. And so I told my lawyer, like, but in her statement, she mentioned that she was by herself. And mind you, I didn't even know to ask this. It was as if God literally gave me everything to say. And so my lawyer started questioning her, and he's like, hey, but you said you were alone on this statement. And so she started stumbling over her words and changing up different things. And then a girl that was with her was changing up, you know, the story, and they kept going back and forth. And then when it was my turn to get up there, I told the details and everything, how it happened. And so you know, we sat there and everything. The judge went over the pictures, he went over the doctor statements and different things, and he looked at the girl who was accusing me, and he said, I'll tell you this right now, if you came in this courtroom and told the story and the truth about everything, this woman would be going to prison for 8 years. But because you switched your story up and you added things into it and you took things away, I'm going to release this woman. And when I say the Spirit of the Lord dropped upon me and I could not contain myself, I started screaming like, thank you, Jesus. And my lawyer was like, calm down. You know, we still in here. You know, we got to act cordial. But I was just overtaken. Like, I could not believe what just happened, because this girl had all this evidence against me, pictures and different things that she had to experience as a result of the altercation. So for the judge to say, if you would have came in here with just nothing but the truth, this woman would be going up to prison for 8 years. I never experienced nothing like that before. And at that point, I knew that God was real, and that vow that I vowed to him, that I will give you my life if you get me out of the situation, I was serious about. You know, I met a lot of people who were in jail saying the same thing. Lord, if you would get me out of this, I will serve you. I will change. I will stop smoking. I will stop drinking. I will stop doing all these things, and I will serve you. And these same women would get out of jail for little petty things that they did or whatever, and they would come right back. Like, I literally saw several girls leave and come back to jail for a different crime. And so, you know, I was serious about this vow that I had gave to the Lord, because he performed a miracle. I was literally supposed to spend 8 years of my life in prison, but he performed a miracle. And so, like I said, you know, I still have my friends that were a part of the world. And so I got out of jail on, I think, a day before New Year. It was New Year's Eve when I got out of jail. And so my friend, she's like, girl, let's go to the club. Of course, you know, when God has changed you, the people around you aren't changed. And so she's like, come on, let's go out. We gonna turn up, girl. We gonna do this. And I'm telling her, like, you know, I gave my life to God. You know, I want to serve him. And she's like, girl, you can still serve God and go out to the club. And you just encouraging me to still live this lifestyle that I knew that was no longer right for me. And so, you know, of course, being around people that are not saved, and you're still a babe in Christ for real, because I had just really got serious once I found out that God was a real God. And so, you know, it was the peer pressure. So I'm like, okay, well, can I at least, you know, get an outfit for the club, and, you know, we can go to the club, but can you go to church with me first? And she like, yeah, I don't care, we can go to church. So I'm like, well, let me get an outfit for the club and let me get an outfit for church. And so she's like, okay. And so we literally go to church that New Year's night, and, you know, the pastor, she's like, come on up to the altar. If the Lord's been good to you, if he's delivered you, if he set you free, come on up here and worship him for the last 10 seconds before the ball drops midnight. And so I get up to the altar, and mind you, the whole time I told my friend we was just gonna be at church for a little while. And so I could feel her staring at me like it was, if eyes could kill, like I would be dead that day, like, because she was looking at me the whole time just irritated and mad. And so I went up to the altar and I just was worshiping God, just thinking about everything that I experienced and how I was in jail and he was talking to me and he protected my daughter the way that he told me that he was going to protect her. And just, I was so thankful for what the Lord had done. And so we ended up just worshiping the whole night at the altar until, the clock struck midnight, and we were entering into the new year. And so after that, my foster mom, the church that I was going to, she's like, come on, I'm gonna take everybody out to White Castles. We gonna sit and we gonna eat. And so I told my friend, like, look, I'm not really in the mood for the club. Like, let's just go out to eat. She offering to pay for us some free food. And so my friend just went along with it, even though she was highly upset. And so basically after that, like, I just vowed to serve the Lord with my life. Like, I no longer wanted to be a part of the world. I no longer wanted nothing that came with that lifestyle that I was living. I wanted nothing to do with it. I wanted to be new. I wanted to be who God called me to be. I wanted to be saved, delivered, and set free. And so that's how I got saved.